picture this. You're sitting on your couch, you've got the remote in hand, and you've just cast your wedding photos to your brand new, massive, like 8K television.
Oh, yeah. One of those wall-size ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you paid top dollar for these photos, right?
Yeah.
You remember the photographer walking around with this massive, really impressive-looking lens?
Oh, the giant glass. Always looks so professional.
Right. So you click to the first portrait of you and your partner, and your faces look great. But then your eye drifts to the background.
Oh.
Yeah. The incredible Tuscan vineyard that you literally spent the year's salary to fly everyone out to.
Right. The whole destination experience.
Exactly. But on this incredibly advanced, ultra-high-definition screen, that vineyard is just a smear.
Yeah, just a wash of color.
It's this giant, blurry green smudge taking up like 80% of your expensive television.
Which is not what you want to see on an 8K display.
No. Suddenly it doesn't look premium at all. It looks like a rendering error.
Or a glitch, yeah.
Right. Or worse, it looks like you could be standing in front of, I don't know, some bushes behind a local strip mall.
It creates a really strange cognitive dissonance, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Because, I mean, we spent the last 15 years being conditioned to view that exact blurry background as the ultimate hallmark of a professional image.
Right, that was the gold standard.
Exactly. But the hardware we use to view our lives has completely surpassed the aesthetic we were using to capture it.
And that jarring realization is exactly why we are diving into a really fascinating document today.
It's a great piece of source material.
It really is. It's an industry brief, simply titled corner-to-corner.docs.
Catchy.
Right. And it is mapping out this massive visual revolution that's hitting the entire wedding photography and luxury event industry right now in 2026.
And it is a seismic shift.
It absolutely is. We're exploring the death of that dreamy, blurry background, what photographers call bokeh, and the rise of an uncompromising, hyper-realistic trend called corner-to-corner sharpness.
A total 180 from what we're used to.
Yeah. It's a shift that is completely changing the technology photographers use, forcing venues to redesign their lighting, altering bridal fashion, and fundamentally rewriting how we document human stories.
Which is a huge promise, but the brief backs it up.
It does. Okay, let's unpack this. Because I always thought the blurry background was just, how professional photos were supposed to look.
The magnitude of this shift is really hard to overstate. I mean, the aesthetic of the blurred background wasn't just a fleeting trend.
Oh, it was everywhere.
Right. It was the foundational pillar of the entire professional portrait industry for over a decade.
Wow.
So to understand why it's collapsing now, we really need to look at the mechanics of what that blur was actually doing for the photographer.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, the term itself, bokeh, comes from a Japanese word meaning blur or haze.
Okay.
And optically, it refers to the aesthetic quality of the out-of-focus areas in an image produced by a camera lens.
I always just assumed it was like a stylistic choice to make things look romantic, you know?
A lot of people did. That was the selling point.
Right. But reading through this source material, I'm realizing it functioned more like a massive safety net.
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive crutch.
Like, if I'm a photographer and I'm shooting a wedding in a hotel ballroom that has an ugly patterned carpet,
Which is most of them.
yeah, exactly. Ugly carpet, distracting exit signs glowing in the corner, catering staff walking around in the background. I mean, I have a major problem there.
A huge compositional problem, yeah.
Right. But if I use a lens that blurs the background into oblivion, all those problems just disappear.
They literally vanish.
Yeah. The ugly carpet becomes this soft, pleasant wash of color. The exit sign just becomes a warm red glow.
It allowed photographers to completely detach their subjects from the environment.
Just pluck them right out of reality.
Exactly. By utilizing a very shallow depth of field, they could shoot in highly chaotic, visually unappealing locations and still deliver a clean, isolated portrait.
That makes their job so much easier.
It provided a default, instantly recognizable sense of depth, but more importantly, it meant the photographer didn't really have to compose the entire scene.
Oh, wow.
They only had to worry about the immediate space occupied by the couple. The environment basically became irrelevant.
That feels incredibly similar to the trajectory of auto-tune in the music industry.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison. How so?
Well, think about when auto-tune first crossed over into mainstream pop.
Yeah.
It was this mind-blowing, futuristic effect.
Like T-Pain, right.
Exactly. It was a deliberate artistic choice.
Yeah.
But fast forward a few years, and producers started using it as a default safety net to mask imperfections.
I see. To fix bad takes.
Right. They used it to cover up the fact that a vocalist couldn't quite hit the notes naturally.
That's right.
And the moment the general audience recognized that it was a corrective crutch rather than an artistic flourish, it lost all its magic.
It became cheap.
Exactly. It stopped feeling like a premium specialized tool and started feeling really mass-produced.
That analogy tracks perfectly with the psychological shift we are seeing in visual media today.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is that the document we are analyzing specifically cites a phenomenon called blur fatigue.
Blur fatigue, I love that term.
It's very real. Our brains are pattern recognition machines, right?
Right.
And for the last decade, every time we open Instagram, Pinterest, or any wedding blog, we were bombarded with the exact same visual pattern.
Sharp subject, blurry background.
Over and over. Exactly. Millions of images, day after day, year after year.
We just got fundamentally bored by it.
We experienced a collective visual exhaustion, but, it goes deeper than just boredom.
How do you mean?
Well, human beings are inherently contextual creatures. We make sense of the world by understanding how people relate to their surroundings.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you constantly isolate a subject in a blurry void, you strip away their context. The viewer subconsciously starts to feel a sense of deprivation.
Oh, like something is missing from the story.
Precisely. We want to know where these people are. We want to see the texture of the stone walls, the atmospheric conditions of the sky.
We want to see the reactions of the people standing 20 feet away.
Yes. We crave the grounding reality of the physical world.
So if that craving for reality is pushing the blur out, the industry has to fill that vacuum with something else.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
Right. You can't just have an empty void. And according to this brief, the replacement is an aggressive demand for absolute clarity.
The new standard.
Yeah. They are calling it corner-to-corner sharpness.
The terminology is quite literal, too.
Tell me more about that.
Corner-to-corner sharpness dictates that an image must be completely in focus across the entire geometric plane of the frame.
Meaning everything.
Everything. From the extreme bottom left pixel to the extreme top right pixel, every single element must be resolved with absolute clarity.
So what does this all mean for the actual photograph?
It means the facial details of the subjects in the foreground must be sharp, but so must the architectural details of the cathedral in the deep background.
Wow.
The fabric textures of the clothing must be defined, and the exposure must be perfectly balanced.
So no hiding in the shadows.
None. No environmental detail can be lost to a pitch black shadow or a blown out pure white highlight.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here as a viewer for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm looking at a photograph where the stained glass window, 100 feet behind the bride, is just as razor sharp as the bride's eyelashes,
Right?
doesn't that create massive visual clutter? Like, if there is no blur to guide my eye, doesn't the couple just get completely lost in a sea of high-definition data?
That's a very valid concern.
It just seems like it would be chaotic and distracting.
Your instinct is entirely correct, and that specific risk of visual clutter is precisely why this new aesthetic is separating amateur photographers from absolute masters.
Ah, so it raises the bar.
Significantly. When you remove the artificial blur, you remove the easiest tool for directing the viewer's attention.
Because you can't just blur out the ugly stuff anymore.
Exactly. A photographer can no longer rely on a shallow depth of field to force you to look at the subject.
So how do they direct the eye? If everything is sharp, how do I know what the focal point of the story is?
They have to rely on classical and, frankly, much more difficult artistic techniques.
Like what?
They must master natural lighting preservation.
Okay.
This means understanding exactly how light enters a room and falls across a space.
So they can't just plop the couple down anywhere.
Not at all. They position the couple in the brightest, most flattering natural light, allowing the incredibly sharp background to fall naturally into slightly darker tones.
Oh, I see.
They are using contrast light versus dark to guide the eye, rather than sharp versus blurry.
Oh, that makes total sense. It's almost like a stage play.
Yes, exactly.
Like where the spotlight is on the lead actor. But you can still perfectly see the entire intricate set design in the dimmer light behind them.
A perfect comparison. And furthermore, they have to utilize impeccable geometric framing.
Geometric framing. What does that look like in practice?
It involves finding leading lines within the real-world architecture.
Like physical lines pointing to the couple.
Right. The curve of a staircase, the converging lines of a hallway, or the natural archway of a grove of trees.
Okay.
And they physically position the couple so that the environment itself points directly to them.
Wow.
They are integrating the environmental context to frame the couple, essentially choreographing reality rather than obscuring it.
Choreographing reality. I love that. It really changes the entire emotional resonance of the genre.
It elevates it completely.
Yeah, because we aren't really talking about portraits anymore, are we?
Not in the traditional sense, no.
A portrait implies the person is the only thing that matters. But this feels much more like high-end photojournalism.
Very editorial.
Yeah. The document actually uses the phrase capturing moments within spaces, which really captures that editorial National Geographic or Vogue spread vibe.
It's a very cinematic approach.
It really is. It's a wide-angle story that says, look at this profound human moment, and look at the magnificent, sprawling world in which it happened.
It demands a completely different skill set.
Yeah.
And frankly, a completely different mindset from the photographer.
They can't just zone out.
No, the photographer has to be hyper-aware of everything in the viewfinder all at once.
But knowing how to look for light and leading lines is really only half the battle here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because as I try to wrap my head around the physics of getting an entire deep room in perfect focus, I keep hitting a wall.
It defies traditional optical physics.
It does. You can't just wish an image to be sharp from 1 inch away all the way to infinity. It requires serious hardware.
The gear has to do the heavy lifting.
Right. And the source document outlines a technological revolution that is actively driving this aesthetic shift.
It's a massive leap forward.
The artistry isn't just evolving on its own in a vacuum. It's desperately trying to keep up with the technology.
The technological leap we've seen recently is staggering. I mean, the aesthetic of corner-to-corner sharpness in a dynamic, fast-moving environment like a live event,
Yeah, it sounds impossible.
it is only possible because of very recent advancements in camera sensors, computational photography, and lens design.
Okay, let's really dig into the mechanics of this, starting with the computational side.
Sure.
The document mentions AI-driven focus stacking, which, quite frankly, blew my mind.
It's science fiction level stuff.
It really is, because from my basic understanding of optics, a camera lens can only focus on one specific distance at a time.
Right, a single focal plane.
Yeah, it's a physical plane.
Right.
If I focus on your face right in front of me, the wall behind you has to be somewhat soft.
Yeah.
It's just the physics of light passing through curved glass.
You can't cheat physics.
So how does AI bypass physical reality?
Well, the physics of the glass haven't changed, but the processing power of the camera has evolved exponentially. Now, focus stacking itself is an old macro photography technique.
Like for taking pictures of bugs and stuff.
Exactly. You put a camera on a tripod, take 20 photos of a stationary bug at slightly different focus points, and then blend them together later in software on your computer.
Takes forever, I assume.
It's a very slow, meticulous process. What is revolutionary in 2026 is that this is happening instantaneously.
In the camera.
Inside the camera, handheld, during a live event.
Wait, so the photographer presses the shutter once, but the camera is actually firing off a burst of images.
Correct. In the fraction of a second that the shutter button is pressed, the camera's internal motor drives the lens elements through a rapid sweep of focal distances.
That fast.
Yes. It grabs an ultra-high-resolution frame focused on the bouquet. A millisecond later, it grabs one focused on the bride's face.
Unbelievable.
A millisecond later, the guests in the second row. A millisecond later, the distant mountains.
And then the AI just takes over.
Yes. The camera's internal artificial intelligence analyzes the contrast and edge detection data of all those raw frames simultaneously.
It's doing all that math instantly.
Instantly, it identifies the perfectly sharp pixels in every single slice of distance, discards all the blurry data, and instantly stitches the sharpest parts together.
My jaw is on the floor.
It generates one single impossible image where everything, from macro-level details in the foreground to infinity in the background, is rendered with absolute clarity.
White is just wild. It's literally computational reality.
It really is.
But it's not just the digital brains of the camera changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the physical, mechanical way photographers are operating their gear, too.
Yes, the physical techniques have to adapt.
The brief talks about a massive shift in aperture control, moving away from shooting wide open.
A huge departure from the old ways.
I want to make sure I understand the mechanics of this. The aperture is the physical hole inside the lens that lets light in, right? Like the pupil of a human eye.
That is the exact mechanism. Inside every lens is a series of overlapping metal blades.
Okay.
And they can open up wide to let in a lot of light, or close down into a tiny pinhole to restrict light.
Makes sense.
For years, the ultimate status symbol for a wedding photographer was earning a massively expensive lens that could open incredibly wide.
like letting in tons of light.
Right, typically to an aperture value like f1.4.
And opening the aperture that wide is what physically causes the heavy blur effect, right?
Yes. When the aperture is wide open, light enters the lens from many different extreme angles.
Okay, I'm visualizing that.
When those light rays are bent by the glass to hit the camera sensor, only a very thin slice of physical space converges perfectly into focus.
So just the eyes, basically.
Exactly. Everything in front of or behind that very thin slice hits the sensor scattered, which is what creates that creamy bokeh.
Okay, so to achieve this new corner-to-corner sharpness trend, they have to do the exact opposite.
Completely flip the script.
They have to close that pupil down.
They are abandoning those f1.4 settings entirely. To ensure a massive depth of field where everything is naturally in focus, photographers are stopping their lenses down to mid-range apertures.
Like what numbers are we talking about here?
Like f5.6 or even f11.
Okay.
By closing the aperture blades to a much smaller hole, the light enters the lens traveling in much straighter, more parallel lines.
Meaning less scattering.
Yes. This naturally forces a much deeper area of the real world to be rendered sharply on the sensor.
Okay, but my high school physics brain is flashing a massive warning light right now.
Let's hear it.
If you are inside a dimly lit church, or you're shooting a reception at night, and you close the aperture hole down to a tiny pinhole at f11,
Right.
you are choking off all the light. The camera shouldn't be able to see anything. The image should be completely pitch black.
It seems like it should be.
How are they getting around the physics of light starvation?
That is the exact bottleneck that made this style impossible 10 years ago. If you shot at f11 in a dark church back in 2015, you either got a pitch black image or you had to artificially boost the camera's sensitivity so high that the image became completely ruined by digital static and noise.
Just a grainy mess.
Exactly. The reason it is possible now is the advent of modern medium format and high-resolution full-frame sensors with unprecedented dynamic range processing.
Break down what those sensors are actually doing differently.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when I look at the camera on my smartphone, the sensor's the size of my pinky nail.
Right, and physical size is paramount here.
Okay.
A full-frame sensor is roughly the size of a piece of classic 35mm film. A medium format sensor is even larger than that.
So a lot more surface area.
Huge surface area. Imagine the sensor as a giant grid of microscopic buckets, and each bucket collects photons of light.
I like that analogy.
Because these modern sensors are physically enormous, their individual photon buckets are larger and infinitely more efficient.
So even if the lens aperture is choked down to f11 and very little light is dripping through, these new sensors are so sensitive they can catch every single drop perfectly.
Precisely. And they do it without generating that ugly digital noise.
Wow.
And this ties directly into dynamic range processing, which the brief highlights.
What exactly is dynamic range?
Dynamic range is a camera's ability to see detail in both the brightest and darkest parts of an image simultaneously.
Okay, so highlights and shadows.
Right. In the past, if a bride stood near a bright window in a dark room, the camera had to make a choice.
Like pick one or the other.
Right. Expose for the bright window and turn the room pitch black, or expose for the dark room and turn the window into a blinding white explosion.
But now, to get corner-to-corner sharpness, you need to see everything.
Everything. These 2026 sensors have such immense dynamic range that they can look into the darkest shadows of a reception hall and the brightest highlights of a sunlit stained glass window and record perfectly clean, sharp, colorful data in both extremes simultaneously.
It's like the camera has superhuman vision now.
The hardware has finally caught up to the demands of human vision, yes.
But all of this technology, the massive sensors, the AI stacking, the extreme depth of field it produces, files that must be incredibly dense with data.
Massive files. Gigabytes of information.
Which brings me back to the 8K television analogy from the beginning of our deep dive.
It all comes full circle.
It does.
Yeah.
I have to wonder about causality here. Did the camera companies just decide to make sharper images out of nowhere? Or is the environment we live in forcing the issue?
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Please do.
the medium we use to consume art always dictates the evolution of the art itself.
Always.
We have these astonishing displays in our living rooms, giant high-definition monitors on our desks, and screens with absurd pixel densities right in our pockets.
Right, our phones are basically supercomputers.
Exactly. The transition from standard definition to 4K and now to 8K represents an exponential explosion in pixel real estate.
Just so many pixels to fill.
When you have an 85-inch 8K screen, it is hungry for data. It demands resolution. Soft blur simply looks artificial and underwhelming because it fails to utilize the capability of the display.
It's the difference between listening to a low-quality MP3 file on a cheap plastic radio versus playing it on a $50,000 audiophile sound system.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Like on the cheap radio, the MP3 sounds fine. You don't notice anything wrong.
Right, it masks the flaws.
But on the massive sound system, you hear every single flaw, every missing frequency, and all the weird compression artifacts.
Exactly. When you display a 2015 style photo that is 80% out of focus background on a modern high-end display, it feels like wasted technology.
It feels cheap.
But with a 2026 corner-to-corner sharp image, you can walk right up to that television and literally explore the image.
Like looking through a window.
Yes, you can physically zoom in and see the intricate lacework on the hem of the dress. You can see the centuries-old stonework of the cathedral walls.
You can probably read the emotion on the face of a guest sitting in the very back row.
You absolutely can. The sharpness provides the data that modern displays demand.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me.
Oh.
Because the camera now captures absolutely everything in uncompromising detail. The photographer can't hide anything.
Nope. Nowhere to hide.
But more importantly, the client can't hide anything. The ripple effect of this single optical change is tearing through the entire wedding ecosystem.
It touches every single vendor.
It's fundamentally changing how venues operate, how fashion is designed, and how people even go about hiring vendors in the first place.
The domino effect is staggering. Just consider the role of the event planner and the venue designer.
Right.
During the heavy bokeh era, a planner operated with a very localized mindset.
They only cared about what was right in front of the camera.
Exactly. They concentrated their floral budget and their lighting design on the immediate space where the couple would be standing.
The altar, the sweetheart table, the dance floor.
Because anything outside a 10-foot radius was going to be an unrecognizable blur anyway.
So if the corners of the ballroom had ugly acoustic paneling or the carpet near the exit was stained, it genuinely did not matter. The f1.4 lens would just erase it from history.
It was a very forgiving era for venue design.
But not anymore.
Not at all. In 2026, if a photographer is shooting at f11 with AI focus stacking, the venue is exposed.
Every single flaw.
Every corner, every ceiling tile, every shadow is rendered in ultra-high definition.
That sounds stressful for a planner.
Planners are now tasked with 360-degree environmental design. There are no dead zones allowed anymore.
Wow.
They have to light the entire room architecturally. They have to ensure the distant backgrounds are just as aesthetically pleasing as the foreground.
The pressure on physical event spaces to be flawless has skyrocketed.
It's completely revolutionized event production budgets.
The anxiety of having an 8K camera document every square inch of a room must be intense. But the source document points out that it's not just the rooms that are changing, it's the clothing.
Yes, the fashion industry has to adapt too.
You mentioned the dress lace work earlier. The brief specifically notes how this optical trend is altering bridal fashion.
Think about the physical properties of the new macro-capable prime lenses being used to achieve this sharpness.
Okay.
They capture micro-contrast and edge clarity with ruthless precision.
Down to the thread.
Exactly. A decade ago, a dress designer might focus primarily on the silhouette and the broader shape of the gown.
Because the fine details would just soften up anyway.
Right. They would often be lost in the slight softness of those portrait lenses.
But now the camera is going to capture every single individual thread.
Because of this extreme clarity, fabric texture visibility has become a massive priority for modern bridal designers.
That makes total sense.
If you are designing a luxury gown in 2026, you know the camera will capture the specific weave of the tulle, the individual facets of every bead, and the layering of the lace.
And not just up close.
No, not just on the bodice, but all the way down to the edge of the train in the far corner of the frame. Designers are leaning into heavy, intricate, three-dimensional textures because they know the visual medium can finally showcase that craftsmanship properly.
So if the venues have to be lit like multi-million-dollar movie sets and the dresses are being designed for macro lenses, the entire logistical process of putting together an event has become infinitely more complex.
It requires a village of specialists.
Yeah. The old ways of planning just don't work anymore. You can't just hire the photographer who shot your cousin's wedding 5 years ago, put them in a dark hall, and expect them to deliver a 2026 editorial spread.
You'll be severely disappointed if you do.
It requires a highly specialized team that really understands this specific interplay of technology and environment.
And that necessity for specialization is completely changing how couples source their vendors and consume wedding media.
Right. And actually, the document specifically highlights platforms adapting to this. Like, there's a really interesting section in the brief that points this out directly.
Oh, about the hiring platforms.
Yeah, it basically says, use Weddizer website for photography and media purposes. You can find best hiring for wedding events, guidance through articles section on website related to niche. Or, well, I assume that's a typo for niche in the brief.
Right, the niche of high-end editorial storytelling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense. If you want this high-end, corner-to-corner sharp editorial look, you have to find teams who actually understand AI focus stacking, aperture control, and full scene composition.
It is an excellent case study in market adaptation.
Tell me more about that.
Platforms that used to just host endless grids of blurry, close-up portraits are losing relevance very quickly.
Because it just looks dated now.
Exactly. The market demands wide-angle, high-resolution storytelling. By utilizing a platform tailored to this specific aesthetic, couples can actually filter out the generalists.
And find the specialists who know the tech.
Right. These platforms are actively curating and highlighting this complex editorial-style wedding storytelling because they recognize it is the new baseline for luxury.
It's a survival mechanism for the industry. You have to go to a specialized resource to filter for a highly technical skill set.
You have to.
And the reason you need that skill set is because the final deliverable, the physical product you actually hold in your hands, has completely transformed.
The album itself is a different medium now.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the wedding albums from a generation ago,
Hmm.
heavy leather books filled with tight, vertical 8x10 portraits.
Just face after face, page after page.
a catalog of attendees, essentially.
Exactly.
But when you apply this new visual language to print media, the album becomes something else entirely.
It becomes an art book.
Based on this document, if you open a 2026 luxury album, you weren't looking at just faces. You were looking at sprawling, cinematic, wide-angle spreads.
The image stretches seamlessly across both pages.
Right. The couple might be physically small within the frame, but they act as a vital emotional anchor point within a massive sweeping landscape or a stunning architectural space.
It shifts the experience of looking at the album from viewing a directory of portraits to feeling immersed in stills from a high-end documentary film.
It feels epic.
It really does. The environmental context triggers the memory of the space, the temperature, the atmosphere.
And this isn't just an eccentric choice for avant-garde artists anymore,
No, this is the expectation.
which perfectly bridges us into the final section of our exploration today. 2026 client expectations and the hybrid future.
This is where the psychology of it all comes together.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
The modern couple of 2026 is incredibly visually literate, aren't they?
Oh, highly literate. They have grown up with powerful cameras in their pockets, constantly curating their own visual narratives on social media.
So they know what looks good and what looks fake.
Exactly. They demand realistic yet cinematic storytelling. But we have to carefully examine why the word realistic carries so much weight right now.
Why is that?
It is a direct reaction to the broader technological climate. We are living in an era absolutely saturated with generative AI, deepfakes, and algorithmically manipulated imagery.
Oh, that is such a crucial point.
It changes everything.
Yeah, because if I want a photo of a bride and groom standing on the surface of Mars, rendered with perfect lighting and heavy, creamy bokeh, I can literally generate that on my laptop in about 4 seconds.
Anyone can. The ease of artificial generation has completely devalued the aesthetic of the blurred background.
Wow, I didn't even think of that connection.
Think about it. Because early AI generation tools struggled with complex background details, they heavily utilized artificial blur to hide their rendering flaws.
Oh, the AI was using bokeh as a crutch, too.
Exactly. Consequently, heavy bokeh has subconsciously become associated with the fake, the manipulated, and the artificial in the cultural zeitgeist.
So in a world where everything can be faked with a prompt, extreme realism becomes the ultimate luxury.
Authentic story